Okay guys, before we make the pupusas, we're gonna make the curtido, which is that cabbage mixture that gets eaten with the pupusas. So let's get started. I have some salt, I have some red onion, I have carrots, some cabbage, this is the green one. I have chile árbol, some white vinegar, some water, okay? You can use a hand grater or you can use a food processor to grate the carrots faster. And then I have this, I kept this for a while. It's a glass pickle jar. So if you have something, a big container or even a Tupperware to keep it, this is where we're gonna put it, okay? So these things are kind of not precise as far as how many carrots or how many cabbage. It just depends on how much you want to make. So if you're going to make a lot, then you will kind of need what I have here, which is a whole cabbage, the 2 red onions, about 5 or 6 carrots, and some chile árbol. This is depending on how spicy you want it. It takes about 10, you know, but if you want it less spicy, you can do less. So let's get started. Okay, so you can grate the carrots with a hand grater, but I'm going to use my processor. It's with a blade that's for grating. I'm going to go ahead and use just 5 carrots right now. I've already peeled them, cleaned them, and cut the edges. We're going to put our carrots aside, and we're going to go ahead and start chopping up the rest of the ingredients. So I got the cabbage. I've already rinsed the cabbage. And if there's any leaves that you don't like and how they look, you can always just get rid of those. Half, or as best as you can in half. Okay. This is what we're left with. You can definitely cut them up thinner. Okay, now we're going to slice our onion. We're going to cut off both ends. We're going to cut it in half, peel the exterior layers, and then we're going to cut them real thinly because we want thin pieces in our curtido. You don't want big chunks. We're going to cut this in half. And we're going to peel the exterior. Really thin, or as thin as possible. So this is what we want. These thin pieces to go in there, okay? At this point we have everything we need. We have the carrots already shredded, we have the cabbage sliced up, and we have the onion sliced up. All we're going to do is we're going to cut these chile árbol, and we're going to use about 10. Let me scoop this over. And what you want to do is we're going to cut off this, you know, little stem piece and throw those out. Okay. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I have a few broken pieces, no problem. Okay, so with these, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna kind of cut them up a little bit in half or in quarters. I mean, it's not really or right or wrong cut. Okay. All right. So now that everything is done, what we're gonna start doing is we're gonna start putting everything in our container. So I'm just gonna layer a few. I'm gonna put a little bit of the cabbage. I'm gonna put some of the carrots. Okay. And then we're gonna put some of the onions. Okay. some of the chile árbol in there. Okay, and we're gonna keep going. Cabbage, carrot, onion, some chile árbol. Okay, and repeats. So at this point, I think I have more than I need. And all I did for this whole container was about 3/4 of a cabbage. This was 1 full onion, and this was 5 carrots. So it's looking pretty full. And don't forget that we still have to put the liquid in here, so we might have to save it all. At this point, we're gonna start putting our water and our vinegar. It's supposed to be 4 cups of white vinegar to 1 gallon of water. We might not need all of that because we didn't use all of our ingredients, so I'm gonna half that. I'm gonna do 2 cups of vinegar and a 1/2 gallon of water. If it doesn't fit in here, you can either take some of this stuff off or you can separate it into another container if you want all of this. That's our 4 cups of white vinegar. I'm gonna do, sorry, 2 cups. Oh, that was 4 cups. That was 4 cups. Okay, now we're gonna put some salt. Try to mix this as best as possible. I'm going to add a little more cabbage. We're going to top this off and refrigerate it. Here are the ingredients for the pupusas. So some of the stuff is for the salsa, some of the stuff is for the, the masa, and then the meat. So I'm going to break it down a little bit for you. To cook the meat, we're going to need some pork. I have here some pork center cut chops, bone in. I think pretty much any pork works. This is just what I have. We're going to need 1/2 onion, and I'm going to use 4 cloves of garlic and some oil. This is the process just to cook the meat, of course, and some Tony's. You can use salt, garlic salt, to your liking. That's when we cook the meat. And then the sauce that's going to go in the meat is going to take 2 tomatoes, 1/4 of an onion, a jalapeno without seeds, and 1/2 of a bell pepper. Okay, and this is what we're going to use. We're going to chop this up. We're going to put it in the blender, and we're going to add it to the meat when it's all cooked. It gives it flavor, it gives it moisture. Okay, we're going to use some norcal de pollo. We're going to use some paprika for the other sauce. This is the sauce that we're going to use once the pupusas are done. This is going to be the topping for it. We're going to need 3 tomatoes, 3 jalapenos, but I was short, so I have 2, 1/4 of a bell pepper, and 1/4 of a onion. This is just a yellow onion. And then we're going to need either 3 small cans of tomato sauce, or I just bought this big one, and we're going to use paprika. This is going to make the sauce that's going to go on top of the pupusas when we're done. Now we're going to need to shred this cheese. I have white Monterey Jack cheese. This is going to be shredded, and it's going to be added to the cooked meat. So it's going to be cheese and pork pupusas, and you're going to need a bag of maseca. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to chop up our pork. And mine is still a little bit frozen, just a little bit. And the reason I like it this way is it's just easier to chop, because when it's thawed all the way out, it gets a little bit flimsy. So we're going to chop this up. We're going to put oil in our pan, heat this up, and put our garlic and onion. Okay. So mine has the bone in, so we're just gonna cut that off. Feel for the bone. Okay. Now, if it's easier for you to buy some pork that doesn't have the bone, now that I've removed all the bone pieces from the pork chop, we're going to, now you can keep some of the fat, I wouldn't keep all of it, but now we're gonna start kind of cutting this in cubes. It doesn't have to be a perfect chop, because what we're gonna do in the end is we're going to put the cook that's been seasoned, the meat that's been cooked and seasoned, we're gonna put it in the blender, and we're going to make it fine chopped so that it can be placed into the maseca, or the masa. So yeah. So I've got my pork chopped in this pan. I'm gonna turn on high. I'm gonna put some oil in it. Just enough to where everything's pretty much covered and coated. While that's heating up, I'm going to chop my garlic and my onion. Now remember, this is half of an onion. You don't need perfect, or you don't need it to be finely chopped, because we're gonna put it in the blender when it's all cooked. So kind of some diced. Okay. We're gonna do our garlic. Give these a kind of quarter it, that's it. Again, this is going to be placed in the blender and combined all the way. Season this up. I've got some tums and I've got some garlic salt. And you want to kind of even it out, because what you want is the meat to get brown, like the searing of the meat. And the reason is because searing the meat gives it more flavor. So kind of even them out, and then try not to stir so much, because the more you stir, you're not giving it time to get that caramelization. Just gonna leave it there for a second. Now we're not adding the onion and the garlic just yet, because we don't want it to burn. But we will now that we are turning the meat over. We're gonna go ahead, one side has been cooked, we're gonna go ahead and add the onion and garlic. And it's still not searing completely, but we will get there once this water starts evaporating. Once we let the first side cook and we flipped it over, or stirred it, I'm gonna go ahead and add my onion and my garlic. A lot of the liquid when we initially put the meat, so it wasn't really browning, but after giving it about 5-7 minutes on high heat, a lot of the liquid has evaporated and we're starting to see some brown pieces. We're seeing it sizzle more, so okay, so we're gonna let it sit here for a little longer. We're gonna let this brown up real good. Okay, so now that the liquid is evaporated, I have turned the heat to medium-high heat. And if your meat is starting to stick to the pan because you have no more oil obviously evaporate, you can add a little bit of oil if it's sticky. So oil here. I'm just going to brown it a little bit more. 4 good brown pieces. This is where a lot of the flavor is. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn this off. And while this is kind of cooling down, we're going to get the sauce going that's going to come in, that's going to be blended with this. So I'm going to show you how to make the salsa that goes with the meat. We're going to make the salsa, put it aside, mince the meat up, and then we'll add it together. So let's show you how to do it. So we're just going to give it a rough chop for the tomatoes. We need half of a bell pepper. I need 1/4 of an onion. And then we're gonna do 1 jalapeno pepper without the seeds. If you only have the pickled jalapenos, you could use that too. That's it. And we're not seasoning this up just yet until we add it with the meat. So in a bowl, I'm going to put this meat into a bowl because once everything's minced, I'm going to return it back to this pan. So I'm going to need this. So we added the first half of the pork minced. Now we're going to add the second part. At this point, the heat is off. The meat is still warm. Turn my range on low or medium-low heat. And the salsa that we made in the blender, we're going to add it to this. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to cook this on medium-low or even medium heat, and until all of this liquid evaporates, and then we'll know where it's ready for the cheese part. Okay. Now to this, I'm going to add some paprika. Some paprika to it. And then we're gonna add some caldo de pollo from North. Oh, this one's my new one. This is the reason why we didn't season the tomatoes and the peppers and all that in the blender, because this is the seasoning that we're using now for it. It's just about a teaspoon. You can add more if it needs. Liquid bubbles coming around. We want that to evaporate. Our meat is done. There's no more liquid. It took about medium, kind of high heat, about 7 minutes or so. Now at this point, what you want to do is you want to check for flavor. Do you need more salt? Do you need more caldo de pollo? Do you need more paprika? Check that now. Okay, so the seasoning is real good. We're gonna let this cool down just for a little bit so we can add our cheese to it. Either if you have mozzarella or you have not pepper jack, Monterey Jack. We're gonna add to this, but we're not gonna do it now, because if we add it now, then the cheese is gonna melt, and we don't want the cheese to melt now. We're gonna want it to melt when we start making our pupusas. So I'm gonna take it out the pan and I'm gonna put it in this container, because if it sits here, it's gonna, you know, stay warm for a while. So we're gonna put it in here so it can cool down faster. And because once it's cool and we've added our cheese, we're gonna put it in the refrigerator and let it cool down for a little bit so it can be ready for when we put together the pupusas. So we're gonna let it cool and add our cheese later. I went ahead and put this in the fridge for about 10 minutes just to cool it down for a little bit, so I can add my cheese to it. So this looks like about maybe a cup and a half. Let's mix it and see what it looks like. And then you can kind of gauge if you want more cheese or leave it as is. Okay, I'm gonna add just a little bit more cheese and that'll be it. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna refrigerate this, and when I'm ready to start making the masa and fill them in, and then we're gonna bring it out the fridge and put them together. Okay guys, now we're gonna make the sauce that goes on top of the pupusas. I have 3 tomatoes, I have a quarter or a fourth of a bell pepper, a fourth of a onion, 2 to 3 jalapenos. You can leave the seeds out, or you can include some of them for a kick or spiciness. And then I have 1 cup of water. We're gonna add this, we're gonna rough chop this, put them in the blender, and add some water. I have here what we just blended. We have some vegetable oil, some oregano, caldo de pollo, chicken bouillon, some tomato sauce. You can use the 3 small cans as well, and some paprika. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna heat up our pan, about high heat, medium-high heat, and we're gonna add about 1/4 of a cup of oil. Okay. And to that, we're gonna add what we just blended. And so it doesn't splatter all over you, just use the spoon or whatever you have to kind of let it drip off of that. Went too fast. To this, we're going to add about a teaspoon of chicken flavor. Add some paprika. And some oregano. Okay, at this point we're going to taste for seasoning. Just add a little bit more. Alright guys, now it's time to make the masa using my seca here. I'm going to use half of this bag. You can either do salt or you can even use some chicken bouillon to season the masa. And some water. I just filled up water in the same blender that I made the salsa. I mean, all that stuff is still flavor, so you don't have to, but you can use regular water. Okay. Now, how do you know if you have enough seasoning? You won't, because you can't really try this, but what you can do is once we add the water, we mix it up and it turns into a dough, you can put a little piece of that dough on a comal or on a pan, and then once it's cooked, you taste it, and then you can add more seasoning as needed. So I'll make a little well here. I can't tell you exactly how much water it takes because this is all by feel. But so far it's like a cup I've used. You're gonna need more. Make sure you scrape up the bottom because you always have these dry pieces down there. If you pat it out and it starts cracking on the edges, it means it needs water. So it seems like it's pretty good. I'm gonna add just a little bit of water because I feel it has a little cracks. Okay guys, we're in the home stretch towards the end. Now we're gonna put it together. We did our dough. I seasoned it a little bit more. I needed it. I have my meat that's been chilled with cheese, and I have here some vegetable oil. I'm gonna put some on my hands so that the dough doesn't stick. Okay. Okay. So we're just gonna make a little well there. And then we're going to get some of this meat in here. Okay. Okay, and we're going to close this up. Okay, pinch off any excess. Okay. And now we're going to pat it flat. Okay. Make sure your center is not too thick. Okay, that's about it. Okay guys, here are my pupusas all ready. And what I'm going to do is going to add some of the salsa we made. Okay, and then the curtido. Just gonna give this a little mix. I like mine with a little more salsa.